What is a spirit journey? A spirit journey is when you let your spirit decide where you're going instead of your mind. The way that I do it is usually a few months ahead. I block out a week or two and I don't book anything. And then I start asking my spirit what it wants. This is not the mind. This is not research. This is spirit. What do you want? Heart, intuition. And I wait. You have to wait for it to come. So, this particular journey, I heard in during a massage, which is a great time to receive information, Guatemala. And I said, okay, if it's Guatemala, I need 3 signs. Later that day, a mentor mentioned they were going to Guatemala. I saw a sign about Guatemala in my little tiny town. And then a pilot friend called I hadn't talked to in a while, and he had just been to Guatemala. So I was like, all right, that's pretty confirming. So I booked a ticket and I booked nothing else. I understand for some that might not be possible, but it's what I encourage on the spirit journey. So I showed up at the airport, landed in Guatemala. I got like I almost didn't make it, but I came here and I wandered around. I asked taxis. I had heard from someone in Costa Rica about this mystical lake. So I had this idea of maybe I'll go to the lake, but I was very open. And I walked around, I asked every taxi, some were kind of expensive. I found some shuttles, but there needed to be other people, still kind of expensive. I went to all the rental cars and I was like, how much would you charge me? And I just kind of waited and I did a little bit of meditation. And then I saw a group of travelers and I could tell because they had backpacks and you could tell they'd been traveling around. And I went up and I said, are you guys going to the lake? And they said, yes. And I said, well, maybe we should split a taxi instead of I'll pay this fee for this shuttle. And they were like, yes, let's do it. So we four of us total. We hopped into a car from the Netherlands, from France, and myself, and we started driving. Traffic was insane on a Friday afternoon in Guatemala. Halfway to the destination, I discovered there was a miscommunication because, French, Dutch, all trying to speak Spanish, I'm English, and they were not going to the lake. They were going to another popular city. So I laughed and I said, okay, so should I stay in that city or should I keep going to the lake? And I felt this call to the lake. So I said, okay, if I'm supposed to go to the lake, it will align. So I do have data. It's more fun sometimes when you have no data. I did have data though. So I went on my phone. I was like, okay, we're going to arrive in this city at 3. Is there any more buses? I found a bus at 4. So I called and this guy named Angel answered the phone and he said, yeah, you can still take the bus at 4. And I said, all right, great, I'll be there. So he showed up in this beautiful city of Antigua with my new friends and they said goodbye as they were going hiking and going south to the beach. All sounded wonderful. And I was like, I think I got to go to the lake. There was just something in me. So then I got in the shuttle and oh my goodness, it was 3 hours from the airport to Antigua and then 3 hours from Antigua to the lake because it was crazy traffic. And going into the lake, it was high elevation. So I got a little sick, but I just knew it was necessary. And when I got there, I looked at Google and I picked a random hostel. You could, if you don't have a phone or data, you can just show up at a hostel. And I just picked the one that called to me the most. So I just looked at a few and I said, that one feels right. And you just have to trust that what you're choosing is right. You just have to trust. So you are learning to trust your spirit. You are teaching your mind to trust your spirit on a journey like this. I showed up at the hostel. It was very nice. They had lots of activities, a pool. I was very tired, so I slept, but I got up and did a $5 yoga class in the morning right on the lake. It was beautiful. And then which I wanted to do. And then I also wanted to go on the lake. And there was a girl in the yoga class who had tickets to go kayaking, but her boyfriend was sick. And so she said, oh, do you want to go kayak with me? So I got to do free kayaking with this beautiful Canadian girl. And we talked and it was wonderful. And she had parents in the Cirque du Soleil. And it just was an intriguing life story. And then I knew there was one other place that I'd heard about. It's hard to explain how I knew about it. I think I'd heard the name San Marcos before, and then my pilot friend sent me this itinerary that someone made for him, and the itinerary said San Marcos, not much there, mostly granola hippies with like eating rabbit food, and I was like, I feel like I should go there. And then it was confirmed by the Canadian girl that she didn't even like it, but she felt like I would like it. So I got off the kayak and I got onto a boat because the only way to these little villages on this lake are by boat. So I got on the boat and it was like a couple dollars and I went by myself to this magical little town. When I arrived, I bought this shawl first thing, which I never do. And the lady gave me a discount. And I was like, okay, I really like it. And usually I have someone that's like, look at everything. And I was like, well, I'm on a journey of just trusting and choosing. So I chose it. Then I walked away. But then I was like, maybe I'll go back and change it. So I walked back and I ran into this guy and he was like, oh, I'm making a change. Or he kind of like knew. And I was like, yeah, she might say no, but I don't just don't. I'm having a hard time deciding. I told him that, the truth. And he laughed because she was gone when I got back. And he was telling me that he knows them because he lives there. I think he was from the States, but he lives here in Guatemala. He was like, well, would you like to share some cacao? I have a recipe that I made. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. So we sat on the right on the water on a little stump. We shared cacao. And it turns out he was a reader like myself. And he gave me a reading and we traded and I cried and he helped me understand my self-love and I hadn't even gone into San Marcos yet and I was already having a ceremony on the lake and just crying and so grateful and um his name was Drazo. And then when I was walking later, I saw all these posters for him. I'm like, oh, he's kind of a big deal here. I just got really lucky. And then I wandered and there was a market. So there was music and selling and people and lots of things. And I got a cranial sacral trauma release for pretty cheap. It was like an intro one for this guy. And oh, it was so good. It was like he would hold a point and then you would moan out the vibration you're trying to release, and it totally worked. I've been having headaches for like 6 months, and he was like, during the journey I started to feel like I was on plant medicine. I was like, this is kind of weird. I told him at the end, I was like, I feel like I was like on plant medicine. He was like, yeah, I kind of felt that from you too. And I was like, that's so odd. The other odd thing was 2 weeks before this trip, my body stopped wanting salt, sugar, meat, processed foods. Well, that's been a while, but I felt like I was going into a specific kind of diet. And I just said, okay. And I listened. For the most part, there was a few moments where I think I had a piece of chicken. Um, but I was like really felt like I was going into some kind of fasting. Sometimes just going to a certain location requires fasting for me to reach kind of the highest vibration. So this place, it's Lake Atitlan, I think I'm saying it right, and Lago. And when I got to San Marcos, Straza was like, oh yeah, this is the highest conscious community on this high elevation lake. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm here. Cool. And then after the healing, I went to the dock and I laid down and I cried and cried. Well, I went poop at the Garden of Eden and then I cried and I cried. And then I realized I left my water bottle. Well, I realized I left my water bottle when we got back. And I was like, oh, I left a little piece of my heart in San Marcos, which is nice. And I realized it's okay. Things don't have to be perfect. It's a spirit journey. It can't be perfect. And then I was on the boat and I started talking to this girl from Iceland who was here doing not doula, but some kind of Mayan womb mother birthing training. She lived at a commune north of the town I was staying at, and she invited me, or she told me about a ceremony, and I was like, tonight? Is there room? I was like, oh shit. And she was like, yeah, here's the shaman's number. Give her a call. So I gave her a call. I was like, I'm with this girl. And then the shaman was like, well, we're full. But she's like, if you know someone, just come. So I went to the hostel. I checked out a little early. And then I got in like a taxi, paid way too much to get to this commune that is in the middle of nowhere. That is so beautiful. And I did a plant medicine ceremony, and it was so unexpected and so beautiful and so healing for my headaches, my brain, my womb, my gut, my loss. It was just magical. I stayed in a beautiful hut. And then in the morning, I got to do a reading for the shaman, and she cried and we shared. And I was trying not to stress out about how I was going to get to the airport because I had a flight. I always recommend maybe booking a malleable flight, one that could be changed on these journeys. But then someone was like, oh, there's a shuttle. Let me book it for you. And I was like, okay, thanks. And there's some protests. So we'll see if I make it home. But I feel that my spirit really led me on this beautiful journey today. Highly recommend a spirit journey.